Welcome. Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. This is our week one live stream for our Automation Foundations Bot Camp. Super excited to have all of you here. I'm also super excited that all of you signed up for this training. This is a really cool experience. For those of you who are brand new to this, we designed this so that people without a technical background have an opportunity to get hands-on with Automation Anywhere. They get to learn some about what Automation Anywhere can do. And they learn the basics of problem solving and being able to build some basic automation. So super excited to have you all here today. We're going to be answering questions. So if you have those, please put them in the chat. We'll also be chatting with a couple of different people from the community and learning team here from Automation Anywhere. We'll also have a special guest for our second segment. So the way we're going to do this is the first segment is going to be a profile with Kate, who is joining me here. And we're going to have Kate introduce herself and talk about some of the things that she's been learning. We'll then transition to some Q&A, and we've got a special guest to walk us through that section. We also will hear from our mystery guest, how they learned Automation Anywhere, and some of the tips and tricks that they have to share. And then we'll do some community shout outs with Allison Abel, who is our community leader. And that's the format. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat. We will address them as much as we can. We'll also pull some questions from our community forum this past week to talk a little bit deeper about some of those. So without further intro, Kate, please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what we're really trying to get out of this first segment here.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. I'm Kate. I am our marketing director for the community and learning team here at Automation Anywhere. I am new to Automation Anywhere, sort of. I joined around late March. So that means I'm really new to automation. And that's why I am going through Automation Foundations Bot Camp myself. There's a lot to learn, and this is the perfect opportunity for someone like me. I have no automation background. I did not come from computer science. I am really, truly a marketer. So I needed to start at ground zero and work my way up. And so far, week one is proving to be just right for me.
Perfect. So I think the important thing here is that Kate has kind of offered herself up to be an example of some of the people who are learning through this entire bot camp. And Kate is being very vulnerable in the fact that she's learning this brand new. She doesn't have any background in building automations. She hasn't done this stuff before. And so as we go through these 4 weeks, we're going to profile what are the things that Kate's learning, what are the things that have tripped her up, what are the things that are surprising for her? And I think you'll probably find a lot of your own story in Kate's story as she's learning this. And we're going to hear from you as well in the chat. Let us know, like, are you coming from a technical background? Is this all brand new to you? Or do you have a lot of experience with Automation Anywhere? We want to hear from you in the chat. We'll shout some people out. But Kate, first off, it sounds like the training went okay for you so far. I know it was a lot of theory so far and not a ton of hands-on quite yet. Tell me about some of your biggest aha moments from this week's training.
I think there's kind of 2 parts to this for me. So there was the Thinking Like a Developer course. And that one, before taking it, I anticipated, okay, I'm going to have to pay really close attention. This is going to be complex. I'm going to learn something that's totally foreign. And then when I took the course, when we talk about sequence selection and repetition, and the example with gardening, to me, it's like, oh, this is how we learn to do things. This is part of our DNA, if you will. But the way a developer approaches it is to be really intentional about these things so that they get the outcome that they want. And so to me, it was like, oh, this isn't foreign. This is who I am. I can do this. And then the other big aha moment was the use case course, what makes for a good use case, whatever it's called, something like that. I really anticipated that this was going to be one of those things where you learn the criteria for what makes a good use case. And so that starts to narrow it down. But for me, what it did was like open my mind to all the things that would actually be a good fit for automation in ways that I maybe it just never occurred to me before. So that was like a kind of a fun, oh, cool. Yeah, I can see how we can apply this in a lot more ways.
Very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think you're definitely getting the points of what we wanted to do, right? Thinking like a developer isn't really that hard. It's putting language to some of the things that you probably already know how to do. It's just structuring that in a way that makes it repeatable and gives you kind of a habit to move into. We
Yep.
try to use like fun examples like gardening and some other stuff like that. I think at one point it was an example about brushing your teeth. I don't know if that actually made the final cut, but we try to use those kind of fun examples because it's a good way for people to be able to, put themselves in those situations to say like, oh yeah, I've done this before. I understand how that would work and how that would apply. Talk to me about any surprises that you came across this week. Anything, was it more complex than you thought it would be? Less complex?
The surprise is that it was way less complex. So just background on me. I am like a hardcore perfectionist. I'm really working on that. But with that means that I have always shied away from like technical training because it reads like truly like a foreign language when you get started. And this was not like that. So it was like therapy for somebody who's a recovering perfectionist. I'm learning something new without it being totally intimidating.
Very cool. And to be clear, for everyone else who's joining us, Kate and I did not talk about this beforehand. I didn't tell her like, tell me all the great things you love about our training. Like this is her opportunity to give feedback. We're going to take that feedback. We want to make this as effective as possible for everyone. So, I know that we kind of released this with the last 2 weeks of having people register and things like that. This is very much a pilot. We're learning along with everyone else. We want to see how can we make this as effective and approachable as possible. And so, we want to hear that feedback. We want to hear, is it connecting with you? Are you getting lost in certain points? Are certain topics not well covered? So it's good to hear that the first week is connecting so far and Kate is dialed in on this. Anything that caused you trouble? I'm opening myself up here a little bit, but anything that caused you trouble with this week?
I had one small little roadblock, and that was in the getting my environment set up after I created my very, very miniature little workflow automation. I'm not even sure if that's the right phrase, to say hello world. My credentials were incorrect and I could not figure it out. And I'm not even sure how I exactly figured it out, besides eventually a little circle arrow showed up and I pressed it and it added some new credentials in. So that worked. I don't know if anybody else has had that problem. If you have, look for the circle arrow thing.
Very cool. Well, I'm glad to hear that you're able to work through that. We did put a message in the community forum, which we will share the link for here, so that other people who face that same issue can address that. But basically, you can either enter your credentials, and this is talking about your actual local device, and you can enter those credentials. And this is essentially, if you think about what's happening here, you've installed this bot agent, and that bot agent communicates with our control room. And when our control room is sending something back to your local machine, it needs to be able to have that login credential to be able to kick off that particular task. And so in this case, it's sending a command down to that local bot agent to start your hello world automation. And if it doesn't have that credential, it's not going to work. And so this is really a one-time setup kind of thing. It's not something you'll need to deal with frequently. For most of you, it should have automatically grabbed that credential on the first try. But if it didn't, you do have that refresh option, or you do have the ability to type in your password manually. All of that is securely stored. I want to be very clear here that this is not just like, oh, it's sitting in a text file and anyone can read it. It is securely stored, so that connection will always be done very securely. And that is how your local machine communicates with the control room. So, Kate, thank you so much for your inputs. Thank you for sharing. I look forward to hearing about how things go for week 2. And we'll have you back to share some more insights and where you got stuck.
Sounds good.
I want to transition over to our special guest, Matt Stewart from PNC. Matt, there he is. Matt, welcome.
Hi, nice to be here.
Super excited to have you here. First off, introduce yourself a little bit. I don't want to give an incorrect title for you here.
So my title is I'm an AI strategy and planning manager. I effectively lead the product usage at PNC Bank.
That wasn't the title I was going to say. I don't know what it was, but that wasn't the one. But thank you for sharing that. Matt is running a extremely effective program at PNC. I've gotten the opportunity to talk to Matt at Imagine in a couple occasions, also in some other events. So super excited to have him here. Matt, since this is all about learning new things, I know at some point you had to learn Automation Anywhere. Talk to me a little bit about how you first learned Automation Anywhere, the background that you're coming from. Were you a CS major or something else? And what enabled you to be effective with Automation Anywhere so quickly?
Yeah, so I guess my journey is not that much different than Kate's. I did not have a technical background. I've always been a computer person. I'm the guy who fixes everyone's computer, right? They call me for that kind of thing. But I never did programming. It was something that I picked up later as I started in the corporate office world. My early jobs were very repetitive, task-based, and I didn't want to have to keep clicking the same buttons and the same screens and running the same reports. So I learned how to do some things of doing that kind of stuff. A team at PNC eventually got started using Automation Anywhere, and I got pulled in to be one of the first developers. So I got to start using the tool. Turns out there's an entire career, about automating jobs and automating repetitive work. So it was a good natural transition for me.
That's interesting, and that's for you. We are getting some questions, so I want to make sure we talk about some of these things as well. But it's interesting to hear that you didn't come from a technical background. Actually, I did not either. I am not a CS major. I came from, I don't know what it was called, like management information systems. It was like technology adjacent, but still in the College of Business that I went to. So the same way, right? I had to transition to that. And I think really being lazy is what got me to where I am, because
I was gonna say that, but I didn't know if that was the message that we wanted to broadcast.
I think it's okay to admit that my laziness has moved me into a place where I want to try to automate everything so I don't have to do it manually.
Yes.
I want to answer a couple questions here, and I want to have you chime in on some of these. We got a question from Joseph. What is a popular programming language for automation? How would you address that?
So I'm gonna go very old school and basic. The first thing that I ever learned to automate in was Visual Basic for applications. Okay. Excel macros. I know it sounds silly, but I think like half of the finance world is built on the back of Excel. And every single report or every single piece of data that's moved is in Excel. And when someone sends you an Excel file and says, hey, can you do that thing you did to it last week? And they do it every Monday, I'm just going to learn how to make a macro. And Excel, I think, is pretty helpful for learning automation because you get immediate feedback in the form of a cell being updated or a format changing or a graph being generated that with traditional or longer form automation, you might have to wait and see through the abstracted results to see what happened. But, tinkering with Excel and macros, it's super easy. You can record the macro of the action you're doing and then look at the code that came out, right? So immediate feedback, Excel was helpful. And then as you mature a little bit, Python is really easy because of all of the libraries that are out there that hide the hard parts for you and make you just have to think about the immediate problem you're solving.
Yeah, I'll take this a little bit differently to say that I think if I'm talking to someone who's getting started in the world of automation and specifically they're going through some of this bot camp, my recommendation would be if you're learning to use Automation Anywhere, learn to exhaust all of the capabilities of all of the different packages before you necessarily reach for another programming language. And I say that because there's a lot of capabilities that are built into the platform. And if you immediately go to JavaScript or Python or VBScript or some .NET DLL, it adds a layer of complexity to your automation, where when it's time for reviewing that through code review, or whether it's time to make some modifications to that, now I have this extra layer where I've got to go check the JavaScript, the Python script, whatever it is. That also may mean that I have dependencies that have to be deployed to my bot running device. So the guidance that we give for automation programs through our Pathfinder program is to always start with building a very firm foundation on the capabilities that are available out of box. At that point, then you can determine where you really need to grab for some, customized JavaScript function or Python script or using one of these libraries like Matt is referencing.
Yeah,
Matt, I think
that comment that I just made about Python libraries hiding the hard part for you, I feel like that's exactly what the packages in Automation Anywhere do.
Yeah, for sure.
They let you focus on solving the immediate problem and not figuring out how to reference a DLL correctly,
Yeah, or how to get my formatting right? Because
Right.
a lot of times with Python scripts and VBA, if I don't have the formatting exactly correct, I'll get some syntax errors, and then things are getting off the rails. I want to answer this question from Michael Peterson as well. And Matt, I'm going to kick this to you. Any tips on how to approach business units that are hesitant on introducing automation out of fear of bots taking over jobs, i.e., a team of data analysts have been doing their data entry role for 10 plus years and believe a bot would eliminate their role?
So there are a lot of jobs that have work involved in them that are not actually part of what their real responsibilities are. So if you look at somebody's day to day, they might say that their title is X, whatever their title is. But the things they do to accomplish X usually involve like 60 to 70% of them accessing systems or clicking buttons or going to places that have nothing to do with them solving their goal. That's the part that automation's targeting. So if you're in an organization that's looking to grow or make people more productive, those types of tasks can be pulled out and then additional value add responsibilities can be provided to those people. If you're building automation correctly, you're not really doing it to replace people, but to augment them.
Yeah, and I would say if I'm going to start working with that department it sounds like they're kind of doing like, I don't know, data analyst is generous. Maybe I would say they're doing more of an operational role. I would probably try to figure out a couple things. One, I think Matt said correctly how they can be augmented, meaning that they have the ability to do what they were supposed to be doing and less of this manual data entry stuff. I would also point to the potential of data entry errors, which can be quite expensive to fix, especially once they've been propagated to downstream systems. So we want to avoid that as much as possible. And if there's ways that we can avoid that through automation or checks or balances, or even double blind keying, as I've seen some people do in other situations, then that would be obviously preferential. I would also point to how we can work with that team to open up new opportunities for them, whether that's working alongside automations and taking on a greater team responsibility. I think that's another common thing that I've seen. Probably the person who's doing data entry day in and day out isn't having a great job satisfaction. They don't look at that role and say, like, I feel like I'm really contributing in a meaningful way. And so I think if there's ways that we can enable people to have a greater sense of satisfaction and a greater way of feeling a sense of contribution to the organization's primary objectives, I'm always pro that, because I think it can be challenging for people to see that connection when they're sometimes doing data entry or things that can feel very mundane and they're zoning out. At least I know that's how I would feel. One of the other themes, and please continue to ask your questions, we will try to address as many of them as we can. One of the themes that we talked about this week in our training was identifying good opportunities for automation. And we called that some of the symptoms of a process that might be a good fit for automation. Matt, I want to hear from you. What are some of the symptoms that you're frequently looking for that kind of identify a good fit for an automation opportunity you might be taking on?
Yeah, so I want to establish two words first: tasks versus processes. A task is something that builds into a process. Somebody's job might be to, let's just say, approve a loan. An underwriter would approve a loan. The business process of approving a loan involves a bunch of tasks, small, discrete pieces that oftentimes, like I said, are mundane things. One of them might be opening up a document and reading it to pull out some data. Another one might be looking at a rules matrix to figure out if they should approve or decline based on some information. Some of it might be going to get information from a credit scoring system. Each of those tasks are part of the bigger picture, but not the whole. If you can't automate the whole thing, it's not the focus of automation. The focus is finding these tasks that can be removed from it to enable that worker to do the actual mission they're attempting to do more effectively. So with IDP, well, instead of having them go and open a document, a piece of paper on their desk or a PDF, just have the data from it presented to them. If they need to make a decision, well, sometimes rules matrices and credit scores and all that things can be a lot. Make a credit recommendation to the underwriter based on some rules or a rules engine. If they need to, once they've approved it, send emails and update 5 or 6 systems in order to get the rest of the process going. Once they've affirmed that, yeah, I'm going to approve this guy, have a tool ready to do other pieces. So I guess to answer the original question, the part that makes something automatable are the things that a knowledge worker needs to do in order to accomplish their goal that are repetitive, rules driven, and often get in the way or introduce swivel. A lot of the times you'll find it just because people are asking for help. I don't want to keep doing these things over and over again. Can you help me? We find a lot of that in operations teams.
Yeah, and I think dovetailing on that, along with the question we had from Michael about working with a data analyst team, what you mentioned is an opportunity where humans can work in loop with an automation, right? So you mentioned IDP. I want to extract some data from a document. I might have specific rules that I run to validate that document. I might triangulate who this person is as far as an account perspective based on their name and some ID and phone number and things like that. I might make a determination whether I need to send this to a user to review or whether this is something where I can process automatically. And in that point, my users are essentially focused on those tasks that require additional scrutiny. Maybe they're for a financial services organization, maybe the transaction is above a certain threshold. And so we want to manually review these to make sure it's not a case of fraud. And so we want to look at those kind of things to identify where can a user be most effective in this role versus where are the things that we can just automate straight through and kind of take that off their plate from having to worry about.
Yeah, and that type of tool in the hands of those data analysts who are really doing data entry, that can actually make them data analysts. They're now empowered to take that next step.
Yeah, I think that's great. One of the questions we had from Leo, are there any specs you recommend for a development machine, CPU, RAM, disk sizes? I will pair this with a question that we had in our community forum this week, which was someone asking, how do we do this on a Mac? So what I would say is the machine specs are relatively low, in my opinion. You can go to Automation Anywhere's documentation portal. It's docs.automationanywhere.com. We do have the published machine specs there if you want to take a look at that. But the reality is you don't need an insane CPU or GPU to be able to create automations. Automation Anywhere relies on a fully web-based developer interface. And so it's nice that if I'm using a machine I haven't used previously, I can just go to the URL that I need to hit from my control room. As long as I've got that bot agent installed, I can go through and start building my automation and test it and things like that. As far as recommendations to that, I would say we do want to make sure that whatever you're developing and testing on should match some of the specs that you're going to be using when an automation is running in a production environment. So if it has a dependency on Microsoft Word or Excel being installed, I want to make sure that my runner device also has those same components. If it's just something I'm doing for my own personal use and for testing, that's fine. Getting back to the question on Mac, you do have to use Windows to install the Automation Anywhere bot agent. I use a Mac device for my daily use, and I have installed Parallels. Parallels is a virtualization provider, and they enable you to create a Windows virtual machine. And I do a lot of my Automation Anywhere development in that device, and it works insanely well, like surprisingly well, that you wouldn't know otherwise that I was recording this on a Mac. And actually some of the training that will be in this learning trail here for BotCamp was recorded on that virtual machine, and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. So yeah. Matt, I don't see any other questions right now. I want to thank you for coming to join us for this session. Great to have you. Great to hear from you and your perspectives on how this is implemented in the real world. So sincerely appreciate that. And yeah, thanks again for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Cool. So for our last segment, we're going to be welcomed by Allison Abel. I will have her introduce herself as well. Allison leads our community team here at Automation Anywhere. And we wanted to do some shout outs to recognize some people who are being engaged in our Automation Anywhere Pathfinder community. So Allison, go with the formal title. I probably screwed that up.
No, it's fine. Hi, everyone. It is so great to connect today. For those that I have not had the opportunity to meet, I am Allison Abel. I'm the director of the Pathfinder community and just super, super excited to be here and a part of this bot camp experience. Myself and my team are also going through it and excited to collaborate and share with you all as well throughout this journey. Just a real quick note before I go into these shout outs, I do want to amplify that we have a dedicated forum that's been mentioned a few times here. We will drop the link in this chat, but please, please, please use this resource. We have experts that are on hand, are ready to answer your questions. We want to hear your feedback. So please, 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 we want to be a partner in your success throughout this journey and are eager to get involved and engage and collaborate with you all. Without further ado, I do want to share just a few quick highlights from this week. I know we were all really focused on getting started and we had some great questions and some great progress updates shared. Nancy5804 asked a great question about whether these sessions are going to be recorded. I know that's been a question also shared in this space. And just want to reiterate, these sessions are recorded. They are accessible via this LinkedIn link. And then we will also be sure to share them within the community when they're ready as well. So you have multiple places that you can access them. Dinesh shared with us that they were super excited to get started. We're happy to have you. I hope you had a great week. Please jump back in the community and share your lessons learned. JDHUPS gave us a progress update and also shared some great feedback that he found the info really helpful. So please also share your feedback, as I mentioned before. And finally, we do want to share, Stephen shared in LinkedIn about encouraging his Cardinal Health team to get engaged and involved. We've seen several Cardinal Health members start their journey, and so we're cheering you on along the way. So back to you, Micah.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing the shout outs here. And yeah, it is awesome to see so many people getting engaged. We want this to be a community where people can have a certain sense of accountability. You can find camaraderie between yourself and the others who are participating in this. Allison's going through it. Kate's going through it. Their teams are going through it. People on my team are going through it. So yeah, this is a fun way for people to get together and be able to learn something new together, which I think is really interesting. And it's a great way to be able to go through this and have a shared experience. The last thing I would say is that we will try to make this available for people afterwards. So even if you have people at your organization who didn't join right now, or they may feel like they're late, you can still have them sign up. You can still have them join us. Missing this first live stream isn't going to cost them anything, and they can still catch up. We will be doing these we're basically going for 2 weeks. So we'll do this week and next week. We're going to take a break the week of Thanksgiving, which is a holiday in the US. And then we will do 2 more weeks after that. So people can catch up from there, which is great. Leo is from PNC. So great to see Leo getting dialed in here and getting engaged. Matt, we'll have to follow up with you to make sure that you can get the answer. Simon, let's switch back to Matt if we can for just a moment. Allison, thank you so much for joining us and doing the shout out. I do want to answer this one other question I think we got that would be helpful, and I think Matt has some perspective here. This question came from Marina, and the question is, how can we proactively identify and promote automation opportunities within the company, even when individuals may not initially seek automation solutions? Matt, I'm going to give you the chance to chime in there, and then I'll share some perspective as well.
This is the big question that gets asked everywhere. So it's not just you thinking this. One of the strategies that I like to employ is something I call information architecture. It's a made-up term, branded, not trademarked. It is a way of approaching what the business problem really is. So you might know what one person in a specific group is doing. Imagine a request comes in either in the form of an email or something from a queue, and you know what their basic task is. But you don't know where that request came from, and you don't know where it will go once they've completed it. If you can ask the questions of what was upstream and what was downstream of them along their task process, you can start to build a pretty good understanding of what that entire business segment does. And if you can understand what that big business segment does all the way back to where that work item was originally created and know where it's eventually going, you can look at the entire process end to end. I know it sounds like a lot of work, but a lot of these processes were stood up well before we had the technology to solve them in a meaningful way. So people were thrown at these problems. And if you can look at the very beginning and understand, hey, this request, my dog has decided to join us for this session. If you can find where the request originally came from, understand what information's associated with that request, and then understand what the business objective is with it, you might be able to go from very start to very end and get rid of all the noise in the middle. And when you can build that kind of business case and present that to the owners of that process, they might be willing to listen based on the impact that that's going to have to their bottom line.
Yep, I think that's great. The other thing I would say, Marina, is part of this comes down to the way that you do. And again, going back to our Pathfinder concepts here, if you haven't checked it out, we have Pathfinder Mission Control. That's a way that you can kind of do a self-assessment of where you're at on a perspective of your automation program maturity. But one of the things we talk about there is this concept of promotion and engagement. And I think part of it comes down to the way that you're letting people in your organization know about the capabilities of your automation program. What are the things that you're capable of? What are the kind of solutions that you've been delivering so far? And the way that you promote yourself internally and your program will enable you to get other people engaged. And part of that means letting them know that this is an opportunity, this is an availability, whether you're letting them develop their own automations or whether everything comes through your team, really doesn't matter. But it's saying, hey, this is a capability of our organization. This is something we want to educate everyone on. We want everyone to know the impact that we're able to deliver for the organization. And also having some place where they can come and submit an idea. So, hey, I've got this intake channel where people can submit an idea about things that they want to have automated. And it's their chance to interface with the automation team and get kicked off. So that would be another good place to have people submit ideas. And then from there, I think it's about building relationships, and it's about making connections with different business units across the organization. Matt has a federated automation program. And so this is a great way for them to have multiple business functions within the organization be benefited by automation and be able to work together to kind of share lessons learned and things like that.
One of the promotional things you were just talking about, Micah, there's another COE manager that puts success stories into the form of a 2 to 3 minute promotional video to share with people. It's very easy to put to understand a promo video, much easier than it is to get someone to read through a PowerPoint slide with charts and numbers, you know?
For sure. Yeah. And I think showing people an automation actually executing is another really compelling way to get them interested and excited. That's why we did that as a part of the training for this week. We showed you an automation running. It was just, I think, reading from an Excel spreadsheet and filling some data out, but you're seeing applications that you're used to working with, working under the control of an automation. And that enables you to kind of build a connection to that. And at that point, these automations don't become this ambiguous thing that runs in the cloud, but it becomes like, oh, I kind of understand that because I've seen this thing execute. We had one other question from Anthony Albario. Would like to know if you have a specific team to connect with for infrastructure and pricing. Anthony, we can get someone to follow up with you for sure. Share your details in the chat there, and we will have someone surely follow up. But yeah, any other questions we have? Otherwise, it looks like we're good. Yeah, we've had a lot of other, there's some comments here. We've had a lot of other automation leaders like Matt who have done a really great job with promotion and engagement and the way that they're getting people excited about automation opportunities internally. So we will share some of those assets as we have them. I would also, like I said, encourage you to check out some of the Pathfinder assets as we give some coaching for that. Last thing I'll say is we've got the LinkedIn Live event in our comments. So if you're going to join us for next week, which I would love for you all to come back, We have that there, so please make sure you can check that out. And we will be back to answer more questions and talk about this kind of stuff. Last 2 questions here. I have a question. Does Automation Anywhere have any training to write DOM XPath? We do. If you take a look at the Pathfinder Academy training, specifically in the Professional Developer Learning Trail, we've got some content there looking at DOM XPath. Specifically, look at the course. I think it's called like Getting Started with Repeating Objects. We dive into working with DOM XPath there. And can we use unstructured data to create IQ bots? I would slightly change that question to say you can work with unstructured documents in the latest release of Document Automation, which leverages GenAI. And that enables you to essentially ask a question of a document to get an answer. So if it wasn't one of those things where like, hey, I'm trying to read the first name from this field and the last name from this field, but more of it's an unstructured document and I need to read some data from it, you can do that with the latest release, .30 of Document Automation, which leverages GenAI capabilities to do that. We will have some training videos coming out for that soon. It won't be a part of this bot camp, but we will have those available. And it's definitely a very cool functionality to take a look at. All right. That is it for this week. Thanks, guys, for joining. Matt, thank you again for joining us. Kate and Allison, thank you again for joining us as well. Signing off for this week. Can't wait to see you guys for next week. We will be sending out the new course list on Monday. So please go through those courses, and we will do another live stream on Thursday to answer questions. We'll have another guest, and we will catch up with Kate. All right. Thanks, guys.